Nick, if you were a tree, would you be one of the ones that like loses its leaves, or like a Christmas tree and it's evergreen?
I feel like I'd be emo and just be sad and be like, man.
Real knobbly one. So Nick's an old oak. We now know what kind of tree he is. This is a BuzzFeed article somewhere about that. I'm Mike, right, everybody. We are going to talk about evergreen games. Games that are just always playable. No matter how much you play them, you're down to play it again. These are games that at any point, someone say, do you want to play this? I'm going to be like, yes, I do.
These are evergreen, specifically from our collection. Again, evergreen is kind of as all lists are subjective. So these are like games that are evergreen for us.
That's the secret about top 10s. Everyone should know. They're subjective
all
lists.
Subjective.
These are 10 that are evergreens to us.
Indeed. So our number 10 evergreen game for us, again, is going to be Orléans. Orleans, or Orléans, however you want to say it, is really, really fun. And now I'm going to put a quick caveat, and the reason why this one is number 10 is because Orléans is an evergreen for us because we have pretty much everything for it. We have the Trade and Intrigue expansion, both really good. Well, actually, the Trade one's good. The Intrigue one's very mean. But then we also have Orléans Invasion, which is essentially another game's worth of content. There's a co-op expansion. There's another way to play. There's a co-op variant, and there's a way to play with called Prosperity. There's like a 2-player dueling one, and then there's 3 solo scenarios. So at this point, Orleans is an evergreen for us because there's just so many ways to play it. It is a bag building game where you're putting followers in the bag, and also you want to check out the Giga bits for it because they're honestly very, very good. It's kind of like Quacks Equivalent, where you're constantly drawing stuff out of a bag, and you want those acrylic click-clacky bits. They're very good. This isn't an ad, but they're very good. So you're drawing out those followers, and you're putting them onto your main board, and your main board will have actions that require those followers. So like this action might require like a fisherman and a farmer. So you put a fisherman farmer there, boom, now you can do that action. And you are trying to get goods, you're trying to travel around the French countryside and put out like trading posts, you're trying to gather the love of like the citizens and all this different kind of stuff. Just general beige Euro-y stuff, we love it. But with the Orleans Invasion expansion, the Trade and Intrigue adds like trade routes and a whole bunch of other stuff. The Invasion expansion adds Orleans Invasion, which is a co-op version of the game, which is so much fun. There's like solo scenarios, there's that 2-player version. There's all these different ways to play it that for us, it just never gets old because we played a whole bunch of the competitive version, and then we got Orleans Invasion, and then we just played a ton of Orleans Invasion. We're like co-op all day. That's all we ever want to play again. And we played that way for a couple years, just playing nothing but co-op. And then we're kind of like, you know, I think I want to go back to the competitive version. So now we started going back through the different competitive versions, and it just sticks around because there's so many different ways to play it. I love Orléans. It's so, so good because it's got so much variety. It's just outstanding, and it's an evergreen for us.
Number 9, I assume, is a evergreen for a lot of people. It really feels like I've heard a lot of people refer to this. This is Castles of Burgundy. This is a classic Stefan Feld game, the classic Stefan Feld game, where you are kind of rolling dice, and those dice are going to dictate types of actions you can do. You have 4 types of actions, and the die value will dictate which depot you take a tile from. It'll dictate where on the board you can place a tile, because you have to match the die number a 2. You can put a tile down onto a 2 space, things like that. What's really great is you have these workers and all these different ways you can mitigate and manage those dice rolls, because dice rolls are ultimately random and they might not go toward what you want, because I really wanted to roll a 5 so I could take something from the 5 depot on the board, and they give you ways to work around that. There's all sorts of ways to score points. This is kind of, I feel like the game that coined the phrase point salad, because you can score points by getting big groups of animals, by completing other areas on your board, by getting a bunch of buildings that will give you more tiles. You can kind of funnel actions into each other to create victory points. There's knowledge tiles you can get, which might give you in-game powers or end-game scoring. So if I've invested heavily in my shipping goods out, I can maybe be rewarded even further for that at the end of the game. There's a bunch of ways to play this game and to get those victory points. And so every game you play is a little bit different. Depending on those dice rolls, it might dictate, oh, I gotta do this action this time. I'm gonna do that over there. I'm gonna spend this and just get workers for the future. There's always fun decisions to make because you ultimately have to roll those dice, see what you get, and then see what you can do with that. So you can't just play out like a set sequence of actions. You have to adapt to what's going on. So that is Castle of Burgundy, of course, a classic.
Number 8 is Grand Austria Hotel. This game sticks around with us because it's just, the game itself doesn't change that much, but the tough puzzle of Grand Austria Hotel is always intriguing. So this is a game where you have a hotel in Tallahassee, Florida, weirdly enough, not Austria. No, it's in Austria. And you are building out this hotel. You're putting out different rooms. The rooms will have different colors because there's different colors of guests. There's like green. They're at like a green table or a blue table. A blue table has to go to the blue room kind of thing. And so you're building out rooms. You're getting guests into those rooms. The guests will have abilities. You can get different staff, which will give you different abilities. And it's just really just kind of classic Euro-y, but where it really comes down to, and why this game is always interesting, is because every round comes down to a roll of the dice, which sounds bad, and it can kind of be because it's pretty brutal, but basically there are 6 different actions, or I guess 5 different actions, and you roll the dice. There's like a certain amount of dice, and you put all the 1s in the 1 action, all the 2s in the 2 action, 3, 4, and 5, and then the 6s in the 6 action, but the 6 action could just do any of the other 5. And basically, however many dice are rolled, that's how strong that action is. So the first one is to get cake and strudel. So you can get cake and strudel, which is, just food for your guests. But if there are 5 1s there, and you choose that action, you get to get 5 cake and strudel. Whereas the next action is to get coffee and wine. But if there's only 1 2 there, you can only get 1. So this game is constantly pulling you in all these different directions. You're like, man, I really need to open rooms, which is the number 3 action. But man, we just didn't roll any 3s, but we did roll a bunch of 5s. And 5s is how I hire my staff. So maybe I can get some staff into play, and that'll help me out with this. And it's just always so interesting. And with 2 players particularly, it plays really quickly. It's about like 45 minutes, maybe an hour. It's in and out. It's really, really good. And we just love it. And we've had it for years. We've played it so many times, and it's just never gotten old. I just don't think it ever will. That's why it's one of our evergreens.
Number 7 is Codenames. Codenames, there's Codenames Duet, Codenames Pictures, and a bunch of branded versions of Codenames now. This is a game that we think is an evergreen because you can always bust it out. At a party, you could play Codenames Duet and play it just 2-player. It's just one that kind of works as a great kind of casual game to play with all sorts of people. In this game, you're going to be on 2 different teams of spy masters who are speaking in code to try to get all their spies together, aka cover up words on a 5x5 grid of words. And you're trying to get all of your spies out on the board first. What's really great about this is, like, if you have someone who's maybe not super into board games, or they don't want to, sit down for something, they can be part of a team, and they can simply be a guesser. So you have your spy master, your person giving out clues. They have to do the heavy lifting. And they can kind of hand it off to a group of people who can then discuss and wonder about stuff, and then give their guesses. So it's a fairly casual game, one that we can always bring with us that'll get played. And again, we have Codenames Duet and Codenames in the same box. We can just play it 2-player if we want. It's all right there for us. Codenames will kind of always stick around.
Number 6 is here because it's just calm, relaxing, and fun, and that is Cascadia. I honestly think Cascadia is going to stick around forever for us because it's just such a good, relaxing game where you are drafting out tiles. The tiles will have different landscapes on them, like mountains or forests or waterways and stuff like that. And then they're also going to have certain animals that can go onto that tile, like hawks, fish, bears, elk, and foxes, I believe is the last one. And so you're going to draft a tile, and then with that tile, there's going to be a random animal with it. So you place that tile, and then you can place that animal onto a tile that that animal is allowed to go onto. So like an elk can go onto a tile with an elk on it. Theme. And so basically, but then at the end of the game, every animal will score in a different way. So the bears might want to be in a couple different clumps. The elk might all want to be like in a line. Fish want to be in some kind of line. The foxes want to be surrounded by other animals, all this different kind of stuff. And then each game, there are, I think, 4 or 5 different scoring cards for each animal type. And so the game is kind of always different, but even if it wasn't, just the relaxing nature of just like, you're drafting a tile, you're drafting an animal, you're placing it, boom, you put it down. It's just really nice. It's nice and open. This came out after Calico, and Calico is a game where it's kind of got a similar thing where you're drafting tiles, putting them into like a tableau, but you're have a limited amount of space, and so your space is getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, and so it gets kind of more stressful as you go. Whereas Cascadia is just open. It's just open. You can place tiles anywhere as long as they're adjacent to another tile, and it just feels good. And it's just such a good game to introduce new people to. It goes down great as a gateway game or a great gateway plus game. It just goes over really, really well. It's got great Beth Sobel art. It's just wonderful. And so we really like Cascadia, and I just don't think it's ever going away.
Number 5 is Cartographers. This is probably the greatest flip and fill, roll and write kind of game ever made, and definitely seems to be the most infinitely playable. This is a game where you're going to be making a map. You're going to be making a map set in kind of a fantastical world, and there's all sorts of map packs now that kind of delve even deeper into the world itself that these maps are being made in. But in Cartographers, you're going to be given an assignment of kind of 4 scoring opportunities. So your forests might want to be aligned in a certain way, your city tiles, or rather, I guess, drawings want to be aligned in a certain way, and things like that. And each thing's going to have an opportunity to score 2 times. You're always going to be working on 2 of the scoring parameters. Everything will score a total of 2 times. What's really fun is you're going to get a card that's going to flip over. It's either going to show 2 types of land and 1 shape you must draw it in, or the other way around. We're going to have 1 land type, but 2 options of the shape. And of course, you can flip and rotate that and add it anywhere within your map. So I think the fact that like the scoring possibilities are always going to be different. The way that they're kind of paired up with each other are always going to be different. And then the order that the cards come out are going to be different. It just never gets old. It's always fun to kind of optimize this map for the scoring that's coming up. When do you time stuff up? Because once something is scored twice, it's no longer valuable for you anymore. So, okay, I'm going to turn, stop focusing on forest. Now I'm going to start focusing on my farms and my little water areas of the map and things like that. So it gives you just fun things to think about. It's simple, it's easy, you get to draw. It has a lot of great stuff going on. And this is a game that we played over and over and over again. I have the app, and I was just on a flight, and I played it like 5 more times. It just doesn't get old. It's just fun to do. That's Cartographers.
Number 4 is going to be A Feast for Odin. A Feast for Odin is a spoil of choice, and that's why it's staying around forever. Feast for Odin is a big Uwe Rosenberg game. It's probably our favorite. Actually, no, it definitely is our favorite Uwe Rosenberg game. In this game is a big Viking worker placement game where there are like 50 different worker placement spots, and there's just so many different things you can do in this game. And that's why it always sticks around for us, is because every time I play Feast for Odin, I just go, I'm gonna do this, and let's just see what happens. And that's what always happens in the game. I'm just like, I'm gonna do this strategy. Who knows if it's gonna work, but I'm gonna try it. And I really enjoy that with Feast for Odin. We're just like, I'm just gonna try something, see if it works, and have a good time doing it. And there's so many different worker placement spots, so many different avenues you can go. You're like, I'm gonna do this, but I'm gonna go about it in this way, or I'm gonna go about it in this way now. And it's just so much fun, and you're getting different resources, and you're trying to cover up spots. It's where the game Patchwork came from. There was kind of this big polyomino part of Feast for Odin, and then Uwe, as far as the rumor goes, basically was like, oh, I think I can make a game just out of this, and then made Patchwork one of the most successful games ever. So, Uwe, you're a genius, basically. And so, it's just so good. A Feast for Odin is just really, really fun. It's just got so many options, and that's what it comes down to. It's like this game will never get old because every time we play it, I can just play in a different way, do different stuff, a different combination of things. I can get these islands, or I can get longhouses this time, I can go whaling this time, whatever. You can just do so much, and it just never ever gets old for us. It's really fun solo, it's fun at every player count. We just love it, and it's just never going anywhere.
So number 3 is Turing Machine. This is a pure, straight-up deduction game where you are trying to get a 3-number code. And this 3-number code is going to have certain rules that it essentially lives by. And you're going to have verifiers around that you can test a test code that you make against those verifiers to gain some information about essentially the rules that the code will follow. So one might be that the blue number, the first number in the sequence, is going to be even or odd. If I have an odd numbered first number, the blue number is a 3, for example, and I go to test it and I get like an X, it means that this is not true. The yellow or the blue number is not in fact odd, so now I know it must be an even number, and I've limited just a little bit the amount of possibilities of what this code can be. Through other testing of all the other verifiers, you're going to eventually land on one possible code. It will always come down to one code will fit these 5 verifiers exactly, and that's it. And that's just an immensely satisfying puzzle to try to put together. You can play this game over and over because they have a web browser that will just generate puzzle after puzzle after puzzle. There are literally millions of them. You'll never play them all. And they do like a daily challenge, almost like the Wordle, where they're going to give you a specific set of verifiers, a specific set of cards to then try to get your code. So it's something you can kind of keep coming back to if you like that pure deduction, which I really do. So Turing Machine is always fun to set up, always fun to try to work through and just really try to see how efficient can I be in my thinking? What leaps of logic can I make with relative safety here to try to get that code in as few guesses as possible, essentially. It's one that I think because there's no theme to it, there's nothing else going on, it's pure deduction, it's just infinitely interesting.
Number 2 is this like the newest game on here? It might be the newest game on here, and this is Scout. Scout is a little card game, and it's the little card game for us at this point. We really, really love Scout. I know you've probably heard of, I feel like it shows up in a lot of different lists just because it's so darn good. It just keeps coming up. But nonetheless, Scout is a game that's going to stick around forever because it's just so easy to play with literally anybody. We've showed this game to so many different people. This is a ladder climbing game where you are putting out a card and the next player has to try and beat that card. If you put out a 3, they can beat it with a 4, or 2 cards will always beat 1 card, so they can put out a pair of something or a straight like 3-4 or something like that, and then 3 cards can beat that, and pairs will also beat straights. So a 9-10 can be beat by 2 1s, and you're basically trying to beat whatever's out on the table. And whenever you beat whatever's out on the table, you get to take those cards. Those cards are going to be worth points. And it's just really, really fun. That part of it is simple and good. But here's the thing where Scout shines, is you are given your hand of cards, and your cards obviously have those numbers on them, 1 through 10, but you're not allowed to rearrange your hand. You're not allowed to put, I'm gonna put 1s here, my 2s here, my 3s here. Nope, what you get is what you get. But on each side of the card, there's a different number. So you can flip your entire hand over once you get your hand of cards. And like, okay, is this side gonna be better, or is this side gonna be better? And you have to just decide which one you wanna play. And then the reason why it matters that you can't rearrange your hand is because when you play cards in your hand, if you're ever playing more than 1 card, they have to be next to each other in your hand. So if I wanted to play like 2, 3, 4, I would have to have 2, 3, 4 in my hand in that order. I couldn't play it otherwise. And so the whole game is based around trying to get your kind of trash hand of cards into something good. Because if you have like 8, 7, 8, 4, 8. If you can get rid of the 7 and the 4, then you have 3 8s together, and that's pretty darn good. So you're constantly trying to like, okay, how can I make this hand good by getting rid of some stuff in the middle, bring in some stuff together, and kind of like those kind of classic card games like Spades or Hearts or something, the game is infinitely playable because it always just comes down to what cards you're dealt. And in Scout's the same way. You're dealt a hand of cards and you just have to deal with that hand of cards and make it work with that. And it just works so darn well. Scout, it just kind of took over the planet for a bit there, and I think it's deserved. It's so much fun. Absolutely love Scout, and I don't think it's going anywhere.
Number 1 is the original, the classic for us, the game that got us here into the hobby. This is Pandemic. Now the reason it makes the top of this list, I don't think I necessarily would have thought this even a week ago. I showed Pandemic, the original base game, no expansions, nothing, the original base game, to some new people that had their own copy that was still in the shrink. I said, like, let's de-shrink and play this thing. You never played Pandemic? They said, no. I got to show them. They all played. I was just sort of facilitating the game. I wasn't even playing as a character. I was just running the game for them and helping with rules questions and things like that. And we played 3 games back to back to back. We lost a nail biter the first time. We got absolutely crushed the second time, and they finally won on the 3rd try. And through that, they learned how their characters work. They learned different things about the way the board state can change so quickly because there's also disease cubes where you weren't expecting to have a problem. And how do we address that while still trying to ultimately accomplish our goal of discovering cures for these diseases? It replicated, unintentionally, a night that we had when we first started playing board games. Before we knew about the larger world of board games, we simply played Pandemic. We had a very similar situation where people were running the game for us, and we played over and over and over on a New Year's Eve night. And that was the beginning of the obsession with board games. Little did we know at that time. And that was something that's really special. So being able to replicate that for some people, and then realizing that I was having so much fun with this game again. And again, no expansions. This wasn't a different version of Pandemic or anything. This is as baseline as you can get, and I had a blast. And I was just like, that's why that game's an evergreen. That game will stick around forever because I got taken right back to that place, and I got to hopefully put other people into that place that I was, where it creates this interest in this hobby. Pandemic, we of course owe a lot to it, and it just reminded me why it's so important to us.
So those are 10 of our evergreens from our collection. We'll just play over and over and over again, all these games, whatever you want to play, we're down. Let us know down in the comments below, what are some evergreens for you? A game that you will never get rid of, you can always play, you're always down, kind of infinitely playable for you.
Absolutely. Evergreens, I think, are a beautiful thing. They're kind of something that always make it to game night because you're always down to play it, and they're an important piece of our hobby.
Indeed.
Get those evergreens in the comments, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody.